Forget your PlayStation 5 and Call of Duty. Before live streams and esport arenas, gaming competition was forged in a dark, loud, and sticky-floored temple called the arcade. And in 1992, one game didn't just enter that arena. It put a finishing move on the competition and set the world on fire. This isn't just a retrospective about a classic game. This is the story of a cultural earthquake with how Mortal Kombat became ingrained into our adolescent lives. In this video, you'll see what it really feels like to play the original Mortal Kombat at the arcade. To understand why it was such a big deal, you have to think back to the world it was born into. The early 90s arcade scene wasn't just a room full of different games. It was an absolute sensory overload, a cacophony of electronic beeps and bloops. This was our, in real life, social network. This was where we went on weekends to see and be seen. And into this digital coliseum, Midway Games dropped a bomb. While Capcom had nearly perfected the fighting game formula with Street Fighter II, Midway took a controversial approach and a calculated risk to gain the crown of King of the Arcade. They pioneered the use of digitized graphics, real actors filmed against a blue screen, and then painstakingly translated into sprites. This wasn't a cartoon. This looked almost real, like watching your favorite old-school kung fu movie on TV, but being able to select and play as the different characters. And along with that photorealism came a level of gaming violence that no one expected, and certainly wasn't prepared for. Mortal Kombat shattered the barrier of cartoon fantasy violence seen in other games. It was straight up explicit, with blood spraying out as you pounded away on foes. This level of novelty and excitement actually triggered your real-life fight-or-flight response and really got your adrenaline pumping. I'll never forget the first time I saw it when visiting my local arcade. Heading over to the familiar cluster of cabinets where I found my favorite games of the day, I noticed a crowd gathering around one new game in particular. What caught me as odd was that almost everyone in the arcade for some reason had gravitated to it, standing in a semicircle behind the cabinet, watching a couple of guys slugging it out on screen. As I approached, I noticed people's faces had a strange look of horror and disbelief as the action unfolded. Then the sounds became clear, lifelike groans and terrifying screams. For a brief instant, it felt like the crowd was cheering on a real-life brawl while the players were throwing down in the game. I pushed through the crowd that must have been 3 people deep and finally caught my first glimpse of the game, seeing the character I'd later know as Sub-Zero approach his dazed opponent, when an evil-sounding voice yelled out, "Finish him!" And at that moment, the innocence of my childhood was instantly ripped into adulthood when the blue ninja grabbed his opponent's head and with a sickening tear, ripped the spinal column right out of the body with the skull still attached, and then raised it up in triumph, as if showing the onlookers, "You're next." And at that moment, some in the crowd actually gasped. Others let out a nervous laugh, not knowing what to make of what they just saw. And I remember thinking, I don't know if we're supposed to be seeing this. It felt kind of dirty and illicit, like we were getting away with something we shouldn't be doing. It was a forbidden secret that all of us arcade rats were in on, right under the noses of our clueless parents. Fatality. And that secret had a name. Fatality. This one word became a playground legend before most of us ever learned how to perform one. The precise instructions for how to pull them off felt like some kind of taboo knowledge that was whispered about and traded like state secrets on the school bus. I heard if you stand in the right spot and press down, down, forward, then Scorpion will set his enemy on fire. No, that's not right. My cousin said it's forward, down, forward, high punch. This wasn't something that you could look up online. This was oral tradition. The hunt for these finishing moves became an extension of the game itself, a meta layer of mystery that kept the quarters flowing and the hype strong. Mastering a fatality wasn't just about winning, it was a macho flex with a grisly sound that echoed through the entire arcade. Seeing the look on your friend's face after you finished them off left no debate about who really won and was the ultimate form of bragging rights. And beyond the shock value, Mortal Kombat's characters themselves were a huge part of the draw. While Street Fighter II had a roster of stylized martial arts warriors, Mortal Kombat's felt like a real-world band of assassins pulled straight from mythology. There was Sub-Zero, the icy Lin Kuei ninja assassin who could freeze you solid. Scorpion with his spear and iconic "Get over here!" always cut through the arcade noise. That spear wasn't just an attack, it was a public humiliation of your foe, yanking your buddy or opponent back to you for a close-up beatdown. Then you had Raiden, the god of thunder, and the four-armed freak, Goro, a fearsome boss that felt almost unbeatable to many of us. These weren't just sprites, they were personalities with unique, visceral appeal that you connected with on a gut level. I grew up watching Bruce Lee movies as a kid, so being able to play Liu Kang as my main made me feel like a Shaolin master with his well-balanced special moves and easy learning curve. The full roster of characters was a perfect ensemble that offered players of all types someone they felt comfortable using, almost like an extension of their own personality, for better or worse. I actually remember an old classmate who was a loudmouth, trash-talking bully, that even at the time I knew he'd grow up in real life to be like Kano.
Hello, baby. Did you miss me?
And another schoolmate that was your typical homecoming king golden boy smartass that Johnny Cage just had to be modeled after.
This is where you fall down.
All of this drama played out under a single and unavoidable constraint at the arcade, the quarter economy. Remember, we're talking about 1992, playing on a full-sized arcade cabinet, not on your fancy-pants PlayStation in your living room. So your time on the machine was a precious and finite resource. You had to make strategic decisions like, should I go spend my last 2 quarters on another run in Turtles in Time? Or do I challenge the top guy over there on Mortal Kombat? In my experience, MK just kept winning out. The potential for that thrill of not just surviving the fight, but utterly wrecking and then humiliating the chump next to you was just too high. And around these machines, an entire unwritten code of conduct developed, the arcade etiquette. Mimicking those in front of you waiting for their chance to play, you'd place your quarter up against the glass on the ledge of the machine, making a silent signal to the crowd that you were up next. While others were battling it out, you'd spectate, studying their moves, observing their strategies, and looking for weaknesses. There was a shared respect and understanding of the rules, and we were all participants in this weird kind of ritual. Of course, all of these secrets couldn't stay in the arcade forever. The very thing that made it so compelling to us, especially the shocking, realistic violence, was a big red flag to parents and ultimately politicians. The stories in the school lunchroom soon became headlines in the newspaper. Mortal Kombat became the poster child for a national moral panic about video game violence. This wasn't just grumbling. It escalated all the way up to the United States Senate. In late 1993 and in 1994, convened a congressional hearing on the topic of video game violence. The coverage was everywhere. They specifically singled out Mortal Kombat and Night Trap for the Sega CD for their graphic content. I remember seeing clips of it on the evening news, seeing these politicians hold up video game cartridges like they were evidence in a murder trial. It was surreal. I mean, they were showboating for attention, talking about our world, and our hobby. And even though the hearing seemed more like a kangaroo court spectacle designed to showcase the dangers of this new media, It had the desired effect on the gaming industry. The pressure was so intense that it directly led to the creation of the Entertainment Software Rating Board, the ESRB, in 1994, the rating system we still see on games today. It's a crucial piece of context often forgotten. The little E for everyone, or M for mature on a game box that you buy today exists in large part because of the pseudo-moral grandstanding that was sparked by the arrival of Mortal Kombat. But here's the thing that every parent knows about trying to ban something. It often has the exact opposite effect. For us youngsters, this congressional hearing wasn't a condemnation. It was an advertisement. If the US Senate was upset about it, then the game had to be something that was pretty cool, right? The controversy didn't kill Mortal Kombat. It poured gasoline on the fire. It validated our feeling that we were part of something edgy and significant. It made those few quarters feel even more potent, like an act of independence and rebellion against authority. The legacy of that arcade era is profound. Mortal Kombat successfully made the leap from the arcade to the living room on Monday, September 13, 1993, known forever as the Mortal Monday marketing blitz for the home console releases. It's the stuff of legend. I remember skipping school to get my copy on the Genesis. Yeah, the home version at the time, which brought all the bright red blood and sickening fatalities in it. Sorry, Super Nintendo, your sanitized milk toast version just didn't cut it. And to give you an idea of just how crazy yours truly was about playing Mortal Kombat, I remember a late-night play session where I was frustrated being unable to get to the very top of the single-player ladder. Going toe-to-toe with Goro and getting smashed each time, I started developing a hangnail on my finger due to the constant button mashing and the cold winter weather. I played through the pain and finally ripped it out in frustration, almost rage-quitting in the process. And then it started bleeding, for real, all over my Genesis controller. But I kept fighting on. The iron-tinged scent of blood and sticky feel in the controller somehow made the battle even more visceral and real. And when I finally conquered Goro, it felt like winning the tournament in real life, with some cuts and bruises to show for the effort. They don't call me Retro Gaming Boss for nothing. So as you can see from this walk down memory lane, Mortal Kombat's legacy is vast. In addition to 12 main MK titles released over the years, there's numerous spin-offs like Sub-Zero Mythologies in 1997, Mortal Kombat Special Forces in 2000, and Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks in 2005, and various different arcade editions, plus numerous mobile versions, crossover games, and DLC expansions. It spawned movies, cartoons, and comics, building a franchise that is still going strong today, over 30 years later. New generations are still discovering Mortal Kombat in all of its manifestations, albeit in very different contexts. They'll play it online in their homes with friends across the world, and that's great. But as you know, that's such a different experience from how it really felt playing the original in the arcade for the very first time. They'll never know the weight of that single quarter in your palm, and the electric atmosphere of the crowded arcade witnessing the carnage when it was first released. The public glory earned from a win, or the shame of a loss. The shared discovery of a gaming secret that felt like it was made just for you and your friends. So the next time you hear that iconic, "Get over here," whether it's in a newer version of the game or a stupid online meme, I hope it does more than just remind you of the classic game. It's your ticket back. Back to the flashing lights, the smell and sounds that washed over when you stepped into the arcade. Back to a time when you had no idea that you were the center act of a part of gaming history. You were part of the cultural shift, the controversy, and a community that was all defined by the simple act of tossing a coin into a machine to claim your chance at glory. But what do you think? What was your first experience playing Mortal Kombat at the arcade, or on other systems or versions? Which character is the best in your eyes? Leave a comment below, and let's get a proper discussion going about this world-changing game. Alright my friends, this is the Retro Gaming Boss signing out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.
Get the fuck over here!